Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to talk to you about my most anticipated new book releases that are all due to come out in the final 3 months of 2022. This year went by so fast, I cannot believe that it is already time to start talking about books that come out in October, November, and December. All the books that I'll be talking about in this video are books that publishers want to get on the shelves before the busy end-of-year holiday season. I'm sure they're anticipating that some of these books could be given as gifts, or these are books that people just want to hunker down with during the cold winter months, if you too live in the Northern Hemisphere where the American book market is. Today I want to tell you about the books that are coming out in the final quarter of 2022 that I am looking forward to the most. This is not intended to be a comprehensive list. There are way too many books that come out every quarter for this to be a comprehensive list. These are just the books that I am the most excited about. And this list isn't going to be dominated by huge new releases by big name authors. There will be a few of those types of books on this list, but mainly these are just the books that appealed to me the most. And most often those are books by smaller authors from smaller publishing houses, less really big names. I am aware of a lot of new books coming out because I am also a book reviewer, a freelance book reviewer, in addition to being a booktuber. So I wanted to share those with you, and hopefully by watching this video, you'll be able to discover some new books. I'll start off by discussing books that come out in October, since that's the first month of the quarter, and the first new book release day of the month, meaning the first Tuesday of the month, is October 4th. There are 3 new books coming out on that day that I wanted to bring to your attention. The first of that trio is Hester by Laurie Lico Albanese. This book is set in Nathaniel Hawthorne's New England, and it imagines that Hawthorne had a muse when he created Hester Prynne of The Scarlet Letter. I read The Scarlet Letter for the first time last year, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I had heard so many horror stories from people who had read it in school and absolutely hated it, but I enjoyed it. So I was definitely intrigued when I heard about this one, but I'm doubly excited to read it now because I've since heard that it's really atmospheric and very well written, and that is exactly what I am always looking for during the month of October. I'm also really looking forward to The Night Ship by Jess Kidd. This is the new novel from the author of Things in Jars, and it's about a young girl who becomes shipwrecked on an island off the coast of Australia during the 17th century. And it's also about a young boy who learns about her story hundreds of years later. I loved Things in Jars, and even though I unfortunately DNF'd a book in Jess Kidd's backlist earlier this year, that doesn't mean that I am not eager to read more of her work. And I think her lightly spooky style makes October the perfect release month for this one as well. The last October 4th release that I wanted to mention is actually the first nonfiction book on this list. It's called Breathless: The Scientific Race to Defeat a Deadly Virus by David Quammen. This is the latest book from the author of Spillover, which is a book about zoonoses, or viruses that jump from the greater animal kingdom to humans. I reviewed that book at the start of the COVID pandemic, in case you are interested, but I was wondering if David Quammen was going to release a book about the COVID virus, about the COVID pandemic, because he basically predicted it in the book Spillover. In this book, he's apparently going to discuss the novel coronavirus, its origin, the way that the disease caused by the novel coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, tore across our society, and what the future of this virus is likely to look like. This book is based on interviews that David Quammen did with nearly 100 scientists. Based on previous books I've read of his, he is definitely someone who does his research. So I'm excited to read his findings. There is one book coming out on October 15th that is way too wild not to mention in this video. It's called Muppets in Moscow: The Unexpected, Crazy True Story of Making Sesame Street in Russia by Natasha Lance Rogoff. As the subtitle suggests, this is the story of the efforts taken by a group of people to bring the beloved kids television show Sesame Street to the so-called New Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And surprise, surprise, it was incredibly challenging, not only because anything involving bureaucracy in Russia is an absolute nightmare, but also because there were a lot of of cultural clashes. Being someone with a background in studying Russia, studying the post-Soviet space in general, this one immediately appealed. I shockingly had never heard this story before. I had no idea that they tried to bring Sesame Street to Russia, and now I need to know the story. I am sure this is going to be bonkers in the best way possible. Now, the last October release date of note is October 25th, and there are 3 more books coming out on that date that I wanted to talk about. The first one is a nonfiction pick for all of you classics fans out there. It's called Sister Novelists, the trailblazing Porter sisters who paved the way for Austen and the Brontes by Devaney Lucer. This book tells the story of Jane and Anna Maria Porter, who wrote and published 26 books between the two of them, many of which were very popular with modern readers. This book tells their stories as writers, but it also talks about their somewhat salacious personal lives, taken straight from the pages of their letters, which were preserved and were consulted for this book. I surprisingly had never heard of these women before, but now I am desperate to learn more. The second October 25th release is another historical book about interesting women. It's called Bravehearted, The Women of the American West by Katie Hickman. This is a book about the tough and resilient women of the American West, from women who traveled thousands of miles to start a new life, to Native American women who were displaced by that same migration. It seems like this book is going to tell some fascinating and very important stories. The third and final October 25th release on this list is The Song of the Cell by Siddhartha Mukherjee. He's the author of big science nonfiction books like The Gene and The Emperor of All Maladies, which is a book about cancer. So unsurprisingly, this new book is also going to be a work of science nonfiction, but this one is all about cells. It's about the evolution of medicine and our newfound capabilities to manipulate human cells, everything relating to cells. I mean, he won a Pulitzer for The Emperor of All Maladies, so I am sure this is going to be another impressive one. But now on to the month of November, which I think is the biggest release month of this quarter, as publishers race to get books that they expect to sell well onto shelves before the big holiday rush. And I don't think there will be a bigger November release than the first book out of 4 notable releases that come out on the first of the month. It's Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. This is a memoir written by one of the 6 stars of the massively successful TV show Friends. In this memoir, I'm assuming Matthew Perry is going to talk about what it's like being on such a hugely popular sitcom, but also I'm pretty sure he's going to be talking about his addiction issues. He's been vocal about those in the past, but I'm assuming he'll give the full story in this book. Given how popular Friends still is, given how beloved Matthew Perry is, his character Chandler is, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that this is going to be one of the biggest nonfiction releases of the entire year. The next November 1st release will be a big one for Jane Austen fans. It's a new novel called Godmersham Park by Jill Hornby. This is by the author of Miss Austen, which I reviewed here on the channel as well, in case you're interested. But in this new novel, the author imagines up a life story for one of Jane Austen's closest friends, the governess Anne Sharp. I have already heard this one is a delight. I am so looking forward to this. The third new release coming out on the 1st of November is a book called Deliberate Cruelty: Truman Capote, the Millionaire's Wife, and the Murder of the Century by Roseanne Montillo. This is a history book about a murderous socialite and how Truman Capote got far too wrapped up in her life story. This one seems fascinating, maybe somewhat similar to Casey Sepp's book called Furious Hours, which came out a few years back. But then the final new release coming out on the 1st that I am so excited about is a new biography called The Grand Affair: John Singer Sargent and His World by Paul Fisher. The subject of this new biography is the iconic American painter who led a really interesting life in addition to creating gorgeous works of art, some of which provoked a scandal or two, like the portrait of Madame X. I read a whole book about the story behind that portrait, and ever since, I have just been hooked on John Singer Sargent, so I was thrilled to learn that there was a new biography on the horizon. But moving deeper into the month of November, on November 8th, another potentially scandalous book will be released, but the author of this one is actually a faceless Instagram account. Anon Please is the new novel by the creator of the infamous celebrity gossip Instagram account DeuxMoi, and it's based on the creator's own experience of revamping her style Instagram page into a celebrity gossip hub and it growing into something bigger than she could have ever imagined. Listen, I am a self-proclaimed egghead. I love to learn, I read nonfiction, I like highbrow media and going to museums, but that does not mean that I don't have time to read about some celebrity gossip and some celebrity drama. I enjoy checking up on DeuxMoi's Instagram account every once in a while. It's basically a real-life Gossip Girl, and I am totally on board to read a fictionalized account of how it got started. XOXO. But shifting back to a more intellectual release, on November 15th, the incomparable Stacy Schiff has a new biography coming out. It's called The Revolutionary Samuel Adams. The subject of this book is right there in the title. She'll be looking at one of the founding fathers of the United States of America. Admittedly, early American history isn't my favorite subject matter to read about, but I will read anything Stacy Schiff writes. Also coming out on the 15th is, have I told you this already? Stories I Don't Want to Forget to Remember by Lauren Graham. The former star of Gilmore Girls and Parenthood is back once again with a new memoir. This one is in essay form, and she tells funny stories from different periods in her life. Her first memoir, Talking as Fast as I Can, was so wonderful. She has an amazing personality, and I hope she brings it to the page once again. But the last November release I would like to point out is another memoir, but it's a totally different kind of memoir. It comes out on the 22nd, and it's called Con Artist: The Life and Crimes of the World's Greatest Art Forger by Giampiero Ambrosi and Tony Tetreault. This is the life story of Tony Tetreault, a man who is staggeringly good at forging famous works of art. He is so easily able to mimic the style of basically any artist that he can create some seriously convincing fakes. It's a skill that earned him some big bucks, but it also landed him in prison. He teamed up with one of the investigative journalists who reported on his scandal back in the day, which definitely lends this book a little bit more credibility, but this book is gonna be a doozy. I can just feel it. But now let's talk about the last month of the quarter, which doubles as the last month of the year. There are 4 books coming out on the first Tuesday in December, December 6th, before publishing basically shuts down until after the new year. The first book in that quartet that I wanted to talk about is called No One Left to Come Looking for You by Sam Lipsyte. This is a novel about struggling musicians trying to make it in 1990s New York City. There's also apparently a mystery in here too. I am a sucker for books set in the 90s, so I think I could have a lot of fun with this one. Another fun pop culture read coming out on the 6th of December is a book called Bring It On: The Complete Story of the Cheerleading Movie That Changed, like, everything. No, seriously. By Case Wickman. This is an insider look at the timeless early 2000s cheerleading movie. It features interviews with the cast and crew, but also with film experts and actual cheerleaders. I adored the movie Bring It On when I was younger. I cannot believe this book is actually a real thing, but I plan on gleefully devouring it. Now, the last 2 books I have to talk about in this video are both upcoming nature releases. The first one is called Beaverland: How One Weird Rodent Made America by Layla Phillip. This is a book about a rodent of unusual size and its history here in North America. I read another book about beavers a few years ago. It was called Eager by Ben Goldfarb. I will happily read another though. Beavers are fascinating. And finally, the last new release due to come out in the upcoming quarter that I wanted to bring to your attention is a book called How Far the Light Reaches: A Life in 10 Sea Creatures by Sabrina Imbler. This is a memoir meets nature essay collection written by a science and conservation journalist, and each different essay in this collection focuses on a sea creature living in a hostile or remote environment. Anyone who watches my channel regularly will know that I love nature writing, and if there's a memoir component to the book as well, that's a bonus for me. So those are the handful of late 2022 releases that are currently on my radar. If any of these seem interesting to you, please let me know which ones those are in the comment section below. I am considering reviewing any and or all of the books I talked about in today's video, so it's really helpful helpful for me to know which ones of these are the most appealing to you, so I can know which ones you would most like for me to review. Also, if there are any books coming out in the last 3 months of the year that you are really looking forward to that I did not talk about in this video, please let me know what those are in the comment section below as well. I do hear about a lot of new books coming out, but there are always some I miss. If you missed any of my videos about new releases that were due to come out in the previous 3 quarters of 2022, or if you would just like to revisit any of those videos now that those books should have already been released, they should be out there in the world ready for you to read, those will be linked for you in the description box below. Also in that description box, you'll see links to all of the books that I discussed in today's video. They are there for your clicking convenience. And at the bottom of that exact same description box, you'll see links to everywhere you can find me around the internet, like Goodreads and Instagram, the 2 places where I'm the most active, in case you would like to keep up with what I am reading and writing about right now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.